Have you ever wondered why some players can play thousands of games and still be stuck at the same rank year after year, while other players just continue to improve as they play, ranking up higher and higher every season? Well, it's not natural talent and it's not luck. In this guide, you're going to discover the 10 secrets you didn't know you were missing that you absolutely need to know if you want to improve at League of Legends fast. My name's Hex. I'm a multi-season challenger player who's been teaching League of Legends here at Skillcapped for over 10 years. During this time, I've been singularly focused on learning what actually helps people improve and get better at the game. That's why everything in today's video is backed by multiple scientific studies, is evidence-based, and proven to actually work. And speaking of things that actually work, if you want to learn how to carry bad teammates and finally rank up, then take one of our 5 brand new courses that teach you the secrets to carrying as a top laner, jungler, mid laner, AD carry, and support. Then pair that with our other new courses on how to counter OP top laners, OP mid laners, master your jungle clears, or check out our new Bronze to Diamond series. Then head on over to our Smurf commentaries. Select your champion to watch live commentaries from challenger experts teaching you how to carry out of the exact rank you're stuck in. You can even ask them any questions you have and are guaranteed to get answers. You can try all of this out completely risk-free, since if you don't rank up while actively using Skillcapped, you'll get your money back, no questions asked. You can unlock all of this right now through the discount you can only get from the link below. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, so the first thing you need to understand if you want to improve at League is the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. This was popularized by the psychologist Carol Dweck. People who have a fixed mindset believe abilities, intelligence, and talents are static traits. So when they fail, they take it very personal, as they see it as a reflection of themselves not being good enough with no way to change that. They often avoid challenges to avoid this feeling of failure and can view effort as pointless and ignore and dislike feedback, especially when it's critical of them. The way this manifests itself in League of Legends is the belief that you can't climb because of your teammates. I should be ranked higher, but my teammates are so bad in my rank, it doesn't matter how hard I try or how good I am. This is a self-fulfilling, self-limiting belief, where you don't believe improving will actually change the outcome, so you don't bother trying to improve, or you give up trying to improve way too fast. A growth mindset is the opposite. It embraces challenges as opportunities to learn. It holds the belief that new abilities can be developed through practice and effort, and values feedback as a source of improvement. The reason the growth mindset is so important for League of Legends is that it can be an incredibly difficult and frustrating game to play. But if you hold the belief that you will improve through effort, and that this improvement is going to result in you ranking up, it makes you much more immune to short-term setbacks that cause you to give up on trying. I had to put this first, as without a growth mindset, it's unlikely anything will help you improve. It's kind of like building a house where all the tools, lumber, and nails are lessons learned, but if it's used on a shaky foundation, it's always going to result in a disaster. Alright, with that out of the way, the next thing you need to be focusing on is getting out of results-based thinking. You should do your best to not care about whether you win or lose. I know, it's easier said than done, but a way to reframe whether you won or lost a game is by asking whether you learned something from the game itself. If you learn something, consider it a win. Why do I say that? Well, for one, you can actually play really bad and still win a game, and you can even play really good and still lose. League of Legends has an incredibly high amount of short-term variance. Let's say you have a 70% win rate. Pretty good, right? Well, if you played 100 games, you'd win 70 and lose 30. Here's the thing, it's not like you just win 2 and lose 1, and that just repeats itself over and over again. You'll go through streaks where you can lose 5 in a row, despite you actually being a 70% win rate player. If you focus too much on the results, you're going to find it very hard to identify your mistakes. You're going to end up assuming because you lost, you did something wrong, and because you won, you did something right. So the question then becomes, well, then how do you even determine whether a play you made or something you did was right or wrong if it's not based on the outcome? Well, the solution for League of Legends is to switch to probability-based thinking. You need to develop the skill of analyzing whether a choice you made will be positive or negative the majority of the time in future games. Here are some quick ways to make evaluating probability in League way easier. The first is number advantages. If you made a play, did you go into it down numbers? If so, it's likely that's a low probability play. Second is items and levels. Let's say that numbers were even. Well, what items did your team have compared to the opponent? If the enemy has more or stronger items, then it doesn't matter, you're even in numbers. Same if they have level advantages on you. That's again going to be a low probability play. And third are resources. Are you or your teammates lower in health or mana before the fight? These are the 3 main signals you can use to determine whether you made a good or bad choice without having to care about the outcome. Again, I really want to be clear here. The reason this is important is you can be up in numbers, up in items, levels, and health and mana, and you'll still lose a fight because you or a teammate made some kind of horrible mechanical misplay that threw the fight. Sure, maybe that only happens like 10% of the time in that spot, but it still happens. So you have to develop the ability to ignore the outcome, or you're going to end up chasing your tail. You'll think a choice you made that works 90% of the time was wrong, or a choice that works 10% of the time was right. It's also very important to be aware that all humans have what's called a negativity bias. We tend to give more weight and attention to negative experiences, information, or emotions compared to positive or neutral ones. There's three main ways this can prevent us from improving at League. Firstly, it can strengthen confirmation bias towards negative beliefs. If a player believes a particular strategy is risky, they might selectively focus on instances where it failed, ignoring successful applications. For example, I can't farm my jungle because the enemy just ganks my lanes and the game is over. Therefore, I have to use a gank-heavy playstyle. Or I can't go to a side lane because my team starts a fight without me and loses. Therefore, I have to constantly group and take team fights with them. The key here is we're not saying these scenarios never happen. It's about how often these negative outcomes happen compared to the positive ones that determine whether that's a successful approach to the game. Secondly, in League, many decisions involve weighing potential gains against risks. Negativity bias can cause you to overvalue avoiding negative outcomes rather than maximizing positive ones. For example, you head into that empty side lane and your team starts a fight without you and loses. You then automatically assume that heading to the side lane was a mistake, not realizing you actually generated way more gold by pushing that lane than the enemy got from team fighting. This is why it's important to also focus on the positives. If they outweigh the negatives, then it's a good choice. And thirdly, it creates difficulty in assessing long-term probabilities. League requires thinking several steps ahead. Negativity bias might cause you to fixate on potential negative short-term outcomes, overlooking plays that have higher probabilities of long-term success. For example, you're in a game, the enemy jungler got to take Dragon because they have a better bot lane. GG, that's bot diff, and now I'm behind. In reality, the enemy spent way too much time doing that Dragon, and you could have actually stolen 3 of their camp's topside into a gank on the enemy top laner. You can't just stop your analysis on the negative event, you have to think through the next few steps to see if you could have actually turned it into a positive play for you. Great, so you have a growth mindset, you've shifted your thinking to be probability based, and you're actively challenging your negative bias. What's next? Well, you really need to start embracing the concept of error-based learning. There is a famous behavioral study where they made 2 groups study for the same total amount of time and then take a test. Group 1 was guided to avoid errors during the learning process, while Group 2 was encouraged to make and learn from mistakes. The study showed that Group 2, who had the chance to make mistakes and learn from them, significantly outperformed Group 1, who tried to avoid making mistakes. Basically, the best way to improve is going to be from learning from your mistakes. I know, big shock. So how does this apply to League? Well, there's a couple of different ways. Firstly, most people really don't enjoy the feeling of making mistakes and losing, and so they just try to avoid this from happening. I see this all the time when I coach, where a player will be very passive. Instead of trying to win their lane, they're really just trying not to lose. By trying to win your lane, yes, you're going to make mistakes and it's going to cause you to lose in the short term, but you'll get the opportunity to learn from those mistakes, letting you then win more in the long term. The second way this applies to League is, well, you have to actually learn from your mistakes when you make them. Again, people don't like making mistakes, and so they'll often try to avoid focusing on them, even without them realizing they're doing this. I mean, we've all played a game where we know we caused the loss, but instead of loading the replay up to learn about how to avoid these mistakes in the future, we just queue up for another game immediately. This way, that bad feeling loss will be replaced either by a win or another loss, but one where it wasn't as much of our fault. Basically, you have to work on being a bit more comfortable being uncomfortable. When you play, deliberately push yourself to try to do things you usually avoid because of feeling scared you're gonna mess up. And then when you inevitably do mess up, you have to take the time to review and learn from it after the game. This is basically what your core feedback loop for improving should look like. Step 1 is practice. You attempt to apply things you've learned. Step 2 is review. You analyze your attempt to apply what you've learned and identify what you can do better. Step 3 is adjust. Based on your review, you have new things to try to apply. And so you've now circled back to step 1, practice. Continue this process and you'll be amazed at just how fast and how much you can improve. And before you think I just randomly made that up, this feedback loop is well established by multiple studies in the field of learning. So if step 1 is practice, what exactly does that entail? Well, there's a concept concept you likely don't know about, it's called deliberate practice. This is focused, goal-directed practice with immediate feedback. It was popularized by psychologist K. Anders Ericsson with studies specifically done for games. And when it came to games, they found 26% of a player's performance was determined by how much deliberate practice they had done. Insane, right? So what exactly is this deliberate practice, and how would it be applied to League of Legends? Well, let's use last hitting as an example. Deliberate practice has a few principles. It first starts with purpose. You need a clear objective tied to your improvement. So let's say we set a CS goal of 80 within 10 minutes. Second is concentration. You need to focus intensely on timing and mouse accuracy without any distractions. Third is record and review. You not only need to track your progress by writing down your CS between each attempt, but then you would also need to review the replay so you could see the CS you missed and try to identify why you missed them and what you could do better. Then fourth is increasing the difficulty. This can be done in many ways, like adding bots in lane, or even just increasing the game length so minions are tankier and harder to hit. Eventually, this whole difficulty naturally escalates to you being able to use real games to train. There really are so many other ways you can apply deliberate practice in League. To train your map awareness, you can use a free metronome app online that beeps every 10 seconds. Every time it beeps, look at the minimap. Pay special attention to what's actually happening on the map, making mental notes. After the game, review the replay and see if you missed any significant events that you actually had vision of, like ganks, roams, or objectives. And to increase the difficulty, simply increase the speed between beeps. Regardless of what you apply this to, here are the key takeaways. You can't just mindlessly grind games and expect to improve. When you play, you have to set a specific purpose. Start with a skill you want to work on improving and set a tangible goal around it. It's important you don't try to improve at everything at once. You want to keep yourself focused on one thing at a time. It's also important you then review how well you did at that one thing after, into then spending time critically thinking on new ways to improve at it the next time you play. Now, that last section might get you a bit worried. Like if you want to improve, you literally have to spend your gaming time trying to increase CS numbers. That sounds mind-numbingly boring. Well, don't worry. Luckily, science is on your side. You see, for optimal improvement, you want to incorporate a concept called interleaving. This is where you mix up different types of practice rather than blocking similar tasks together. So, for example, instead of spending a whole 3-hour session only focusing on improving your last hitting, then the next day spending 3 hours only focusing on trading, and then the next day spending 3 hours only focusing on map awareness. You would actually improve way faster if you just combine those tasks together for each session. So each day, 1 hour of last hitting into 1 hour of trading into 1 hour of map awareness. There are a ton of proven benefits to doing it this way. By practicing different skills in a mixed order, you become more flexible in game. This will help you switch between tasks quickly, like last hitting minions, trading with opponents, and map awareness. When you mix up practice like this, your brain works harder to recall information. This then leads to better long-term retention of skills and strategies. And variety in your training keeps things interesting and challenging. This can help you stay motivated and focused during practice sessions, leading to more effective improvement over time. Interleaving also naturally introduces spacing between practice of the same skill, making use of a concept called spaced repetition. Research shows that spreading out practice sessions over time leads to better long-term retention compared to cramming your practice all into one session. For League, this might mean shorter, focused practice sessions on specific skills daily rather than marathon gaming sessions. This technique is based on what's known as the forgetting curve. Let's use this video as an example. Immediately after watching it, you're going to be near 100% retention. If we tested you on the video, you'd remember nearly everything. However, after just 1 day, you will only have retained 33% of what you learned. And after 6 days, you'll only have retained 25%. However, if you apply spaced repetition, and after day 1 you reviewed what you learned, you'll boost your retention from 33% back up to 90%. And after 6 days, if you review again, you'll boost it even further to 95%. Each successful review strengthens the memory, making it more resistant to forgetting. This lets you increase the amount of time before your next review. The way you apply this to League is to be aware when too much time is passing between a concept or mechanic you learned. Spending 4 hours straight practicing your champion's combos is not going to work in the long term. You're way better off learning the combos first in an initial shorter practice session, then just making sure to practice them again the very next day, then practice them again 2 days after. Then the easier you're finding the combos to remember and execute, the longer the period you can wait before practicing again. Eventually, the combos should appear frequently enough in your regular games that you won't need dedicated practice for them anymore. Knowing about spaced repetition is important so you don't waste your time trying to cram a ton of practice at once only to then see no progress after a week or two. Only then to repeat this exact process later on and feeling like despite trying to improve, it's just not working for you. The next thing you need to know about is what's called your mental stack. Your mental stack is like your brain's working memory for game-related tasks. It's the collection of things you're actively thinking about and managing while you're playing. These are things like last-hitting minions, launching the minimap, tracking enemy cooldowns, etc. In a complex game like League, players need to juggle many tasks at once, and so the size and efficiency of your mental stack can significantly impact your performance. So there are three main ways you can improve your mental stack. First is making certain tasks automatic. You know how in the earlier section we talked about training your last hitting or map awareness? Well, it's not that you become good at that skill that's so important. It's also that the skill then becomes more automatic, freeing up your mental stack to focus on other things. For example, if last hitting and map awareness are automatic for you, then it's easier to shift your focus on training and positioning. Second is training your ability to multitask. As a jungler, for example, it can be frustrating at first having to both focus on clearing your camps, but also moving your camera to check lanes for possible ganks. But you have to push yourself to actually do this. Even though you're going to clear slower and be bad at it in the short term, this is how you improve your general skills of multitasking. And third is prioritizing what goes into your mental stack based on the game's state. Examples of doing this would be instead of checking your lanes while you're using abilities on camps, you look to check your lanes when you're moving between camps. Or as a laner, between last hits, checking the map instead of trying to do both at the same time. Or when you see the enemy jungler on the opposite side, shifting your focus to trading, positioning, and cooldowns. Basically, you need to be asking yourself if what you're focusing on is actually needed in that moment, as your mental stack can be consumed by unnecessary things. It's also why so many high-level players and coaches recommend sticking with one champion at first. By mastering the champion, you're going to free up your mental stack to focus on the other general fundamentals of the game, instead of being distracted by ability usage and combos. And finally, let's talk about realistic expectations. When you queue up for a game of League of Legends, try to remind yourself of the rule of 3. 1 out of 3 games are going to be losses, no matter how well you do. 1 out of 3 games are going to be wins, no matter how bad you do. And 1 out of 3 games are going to be where you're the deciding factor on the outcome. Here's the catch. When you're in a game, you can't know which of these games you're in until the end. So you have to play each game as if it's that 1 out of 3 where your impact matters. This is exactly why, as we talked about earlier, the outcome shouldn't be important, as a good portion of your games you're going to lose even when you play well. Your goal heading into each game is to learn something you could have done better, whether it's a win or loss. This way, you increase your ability to win those 1 in 3 games over time. And speaking of which, you need to understand, League is a marathon, it's not a sprint. If you maintained a 55% win rate and started in silver, it would take you approximately 267 games to hit gold. If you played 2 hours every single day, this would take you 67 days straight. Now, increase your win rate to 60% instead, and it takes that silver player 134 games and 34 days instead, half the time. There's 2 things you can take from this. First, if you want to rank up fast, then quality instead of quantity is the answer. Having focused games where you're prioritizing learning and improving, it's going to give you a higher win rate and cut your grind down way more than if you just mindlessly grind. Secondly, even if you do have a high win rate, you're still going to have to play a lot. So try to contextualize short-term loss streaks to not mean as much, because even if you won instead, you still have a lot more games ahead of you anyways. And of course, if you want to increase your win rate, improve, and rank up fast, then take one of our 5 brand new courses that teach you the secrets to carrying as a top laner, jungler, mid laner, AD carry, and support. Pair that with our other new courses on how to counter OP top laners, OP mid laners, master your jungle clears, or check out our new Bronze to Diamond series. It doesn't stop there. We have new Season 14 courses on macro, wave control, trading, settings and hotkeys, CSing, vision, mechanics, low elo mistakes, the list goes on. Then head on over to our Smurf commentaries. Select your champion to watch live commentaries from challenger experts, teaching you how to carry out of the exact rank you're stuck in. Best part is you can try all this out completely risk-free, since if you don't rank up while actively using skill capped, you'll get your money back, no questions asked. You can unlock all of this right now through the discount you can only get from the link below. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, and that will do it for this one. We here at Skill Capped want to thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.